poor virgin, married his ex-best friend, a millionaire CEO, after being left pregnant and broke. And he's pained. This Tiana wore a custom emerald gown that hugged curves he remembered and new confidence he'd never seen. Diamond earrings caught the camera flashes as she laughed at something her husband whispered in her ear. Her husband, Malik Richardson, the billionaire CEO who used to be Evan's college roommate. The same guy Evan used to mock behind his back for caring too much about social justice nonsense. Have you ever watched someone you abandoned not just survive, but absolutely thrive? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. You married Malik? Evan Carter froze on the red carpet, champagne glass halfway to his lips. There she was, Tiana, his ex-girlfriend. The broke college student from Detroit he'd ghosted 18 months ago when she told him she was pregnant. But this wasn't the same woman. This Tiana wore a custom emerald gown that hugged curves he remembered and new confidence he'd never seen. Diamond earrings caught the camera flashes as she laughed at something her husband whispered in her ear. Her husband, Malik Richardson, the billionaire CEO who used to be Evan's college roommate. The same guy Evan used to mock behind his back for caring too much about social justice nonsense. The same guy who is now worth 3 times what Evan's family had ever been. Have you ever run into an ex who left you broken, only to see them realize what they lost when it was too late? Have you ever watched someone you abandoned not just survive, but absolutely thrive? Tonight, you're about to witness what happens when a woman turns her greatest betrayal into her biggest comeback. Because here's the thing about love, race, and money in America. They don't just collide, they explode. And when the smoke clears, somebody always wins. Somebody always loses. The problem started when Evan thought his white privilege could erase his responsibilities. When he believed his Ivy League education made him better than the Detroit girl who gave him everything. When he decided that loving someone wasn't worth the inconvenience of staying. But what would you do if the person who destroyed you had to watch you rebuild yourself into something they could never reach? What if your greatest revenge was simply living your best life? Follow along as we uncover how one voicemail changed everything, exposing not just abandonment, but racism that went viral and made America choose sides. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. She gave him everything she had kept sacred for 22 years, believing his whispered promises about forever, until the day 2 pink lines made him disappear. Tiana Washington had rules about her body, about her heart, about who got access to either. Growing up in Detroit with a single mother who cleaned office buildings to pay rent taught her that giving yourself away meant losing pieces you might never get back. But Evan Carter was different. At least, that's what she told herself during those late-night study sessions at Northwestern University. He was pre-med, she was pre-law. He drove a BMW his daddy bought him. She took 3 buses to get to campus. He talked about changing the world. She actually needed it changed. For 2 years, she kept him at arm's length. 2 years of coffee dates and library kisses and him begging to take things further. 2 years of, I'm not ready, and I want to wait for someone special, and him swearing he understood. The night she finally said yes, rain drummed against his dorm room windows like applause. He lit candles and played soft music and treated her like she was made of glass. When she winced at the initial pain, he stopped, kissed her tears, waited until she nodded for him to continue. I love you, he whispered against her neck as they moved together. I'll always love you. She believed him. 3 months later, the pregnancy test trembled in her hands like a verdict, 2 pink lines bold against the white plastic. Outside her cramped Detroit apartment, winter rain hammered the windows, each drop echoing the tears she refused to let fall. She called him immediately. Evan, we need to talk. Can't wait. I'm studying for the MCAT. I'm pregnant. Silence. Long enough for her heart to crack. That's not my problem. For words that changed everything. For words that ended 2 years of love in 2 seconds. For words that turned her sacred gift into her biggest mistake. She tried calling back. Voicemail. She tried texting. Read receipts showed he saw every message, but no response. She even drove to his dorm, but his roommates said he'd gone home to Connecticut for family business. That was the last time she saw him. For 6 weeks, she called every day. For 6 weeks, she got nothing but silence. The eviction notice arrived the same day. Her morning sickness got so bad she couldn't work her campus job anymore. Have you ever trusted someone completely, only to discover they saw you as temporary? Have you ever given someone your most precious gift, only to watch them treat it like garbage? Share in the comments if you've felt that betrayal, because what happened next proves that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the setup for the best thing. The eviction notice arrived the same day as the voicemail. Evan's voice, drunk and slurred. "I can't do this, Tiana. I'm not built for complications." She had no idea that across town, someone else had been watching her struggle, waiting for the right moment to step in. Someone who would prove that real men don't run from responsibility, they run toward it. The man who saved her wasn't a stranger. He was someone Evan had spent 4 years calling his best friend while mocking him behind his back. Malik Richardson stood in Tiana's doorway, holding grocery bags like lifelines. At 6'3", he filled the frame completely, his designer suit wrinkled from rushing across town, concern creasing his dark features as he took in her hollow cheeks, and the eviction notice taped to her door. "How long has it been since you've eaten?" he asked, not even saying hello first. Tiana clutched her robe tighter, embarrassed. She'd known Malik peripherally through Evan, the scholarship kid who'd made it big in tech, the one Evan whispered about at parties. "Lucky he's smart, because he'll never fit in anywhere that matters," Evan used to say, laughing at his own cruelty. Now Malik owned half of Chicago's tech district. "I'm fine," she lied, even as her stomach growled loudly enough to give her away. "No, you're not." He stepped inside without invitation, setting bags on her kitchen counter and immediately starting to unpack them. "I know about the pregnancy. I know about Evan ghosting you. I know your landlord served you papers yesterday." Her cheeks burned. "How do you? I make it my business to know when people I care about are in trouble. We barely know each other." He paused, holding a carton of orange juice, and looked at her directly. "I know you tutored half our economics class for free because you couldn't stand watching people fail. I know you gave your winter coat to that homeless girl who sat outside the library. I know you worked 20 hours a week just to afford textbooks while Evan complained about his trust fund not covering his spring break trip to Cabo." Her throat tightened. Someone had been watching. Someone had been paying attention. "I also know," he continued, voice dropping lower, "that you deserve better than what he gave you." The careful way he didn't look at her body, respecting her space while she was vulnerable, made something flutter in her chest. When their hands brushed as he transferred bags, electricity shot through her fingertips. "I can't accept charity," she whispered. "It's not charity. It's investment." He pulled keys from his pocket. "I have a guest room. Full kitchen. No strings, no expectations, no timeline. Just safety until you figure out your next move. When you were at your lowest, who showed up without being asked? Who saw your worth when you couldn't see it yourself? Tag someone who became your unexpected hero, because sometimes salvation comes from the most unlikely places." She stared at the keys, pride warring with desperation. Outside, Detroit's November wind howled through the cracks in her windows, reminding her that winter was coming and she had nowhere to go. "Why?" she asked. "Because Evan's an idiot," he said simply, "and because some things are worth protecting." As she accepted his keys, he mentioned something that stopped her cold. "Evan doesn't know I'm here, and he doesn't need to know. Not until you're ready." The way he said, "you're ready," suggested he was planning something bigger than just temporary shelter. Something that would make Evan regret every choice he'd ever made. She moved into his penthouse, expecting to feel like a charity case. Instead, she felt like she was finally home. Malik's apartment occupied the top 2 floors of a building he owned in downtown Chicago. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of Lake Michigan that made her breath catch, but it was the smaller details that made her feel safe. Fresh flowers in her bathroom, pregnancy vitamins on the kitchen counter, a bookshelf filled with legal texts he'd somehow acquired just for her. "The guest room has its own entrance if you need privacy," he said, showing her around. "But I hope you'll join me for dinner. I hate eating alone." 3 days in, She discovered he was lying about hating solitude. She caught him on his balcony at sunrise, coffee cup in hand, looking perfectly content with the quiet. He ate alone because he chose to, which made his dinner invitations feel like gifts instead of obligations. Their conversations started carefully. How was her day? Did she need anything? But late night talks evolved into something deeper. He told her about growing up in Southside Chicago, about being the first in his family to graduate college, about building his company from nothing while watching friends having cruise on Family Connections. I lost a baby once too, he admitted one night during a thunderstorm, after she'd fallen asleep against his chest watching a movie. She woke to find a sonogram photo on the coffee table. Not hers, but one he'd kept from years ago. Different circumstances, same pain. Her ex-girlfriend had been white from old money, and when her parents discovered the pregnancy, they'd forced her to choose the baby or her inheritance. She'd chosen money. He'd chosen to never trust easily again. That's why you're helping me, Tiana realized. You know what it feels like to be disposable? No, he said, voice rough with emotion. I'm helping you because you're not disposable. You never were. The city spread below his windows like scattered jewels, but Tiana found herself watching Malik instead. The way he moved through his space with quiet confidence, never making her feel small in his vastness. When she caught him looking at her with undisguised longing, he didn't apologize or look away. He let her see his want. During that same thunderstorm, when lightning made her jump and seek comfort, he held her without expectation, feeling her body relax against his for the first time. His heartbeat under her ear was steady, reliable, everything Evans had never been. I could fall for you, she whispered into the darkness. I already have, he whispered back. What's the difference between a man who wants to own you and one who wants to know you? Between someone who sees your body as a convenience and someone who sees your heart as a treasure? Share your thoughts on what real protection feels like, because sometimes the strongest man is the one who never makes you feel weak. When she fell asleep against his chest, she woke to sunlight and the scent of breakfast cooking. On the coffee table sat a new phone. Her old one had been disconnected for weeks. Thought you might want to call your mom, he said simply. For the first time in months, she smiled without forcing it. The night she finally let him hold her wasn't about passion. It was about permission to stop carrying everything alone. 2 months of living with Malik had taught Tiana the difference between wanting someone and needing them. She wanted him. God, she wanted him. The way he hummed while cooking breakfast, how he argued with the TV during basketball games, the careful way he knocked before entering any room she occupied. But she didn't need him. That was the miracle. For the first time since Detroit, since Evan, since her world collapsed, she had choices. Malik made sure of that. He'd quietly handled her legal bills, helped her transfer schools to finish her degree remotely, even had groceries delivered without asking what she preferred. Somehow he just knew she liked green apples, but not red ones, that she put hot sauce on everything. That chocolate made her morning sickness worse. The breakdown came on a Tuesday. Rain painted abstract patterns on the windows as she curled into the corner of his leather couch. Pregnancy hormones making everything feel amplified. Her hurt, her loneliness, her desperate need to be wanted by someone who stayed. I feel like damaged goods, she said, not meaning to speak the words aloud. Malik looked up from his laptop, where he'd been working while she studied. Why? Because he took something I can never get back. My first time, I trust my... She gestured helplessly at her growing belly. My choices. He closed the laptop, moved to sit beside her. Not touching, just present. He took nothing you didn't freely give. That doesn't make you damaged. That makes you human. Easy for you to say. Is it? His voice carried an edge she rarely heard. You think I don't know what it feels like to give someone everything and watch them throw it away? You think I don't understand how it feels to question every decision that led to that moment? She looked at him, then really looked, saw the pain he carried quietly, the way he protected everyone else's heart because his own had been shattered too. I want to trust you, she whispered. Then trust me. When she kissed him, it wasn't desperate or needy. It was a choice. A deliberate decision to stop punishing herself for Evan's failures. His lips were soft, questioning, giving her every opportunity to change her mind. She didn't want to. Rain continued drumming against the windows as she traced the line of his jaw with trembling fingers. When he kissed her back, she tasted patience and promise, and something that felt dangerously close to devotion. "Is this okay?" he asked against her mouth. "Yes," she breathed, surprised by how much she meant it. "When did comfort become attraction for you? How do you know when someone is right for your heart and not just your moment? Because sometimes the scariest thing isn't falling, it's trusting someone to catch you." Their phone was already buzzing with a text from unknown number. "Evan's been asking about you. He knows where you are." But wrapped in Malik's arms, she found she didn't care. Just when she started believing in new beginnings, her past showed up at Malik's office building, demanding answers. Evan Carter looked nothing like the confident pre-med student who'd once promised her forever. His designer clothes hung loose on a frame that had lost 20 pounds. His skin had that gray tinge of someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. And when security called to announce his arrival, Malik's jaw tightened in a way that made Tiana's stomach clench. "You don't have to see him," Malik said, but she was already reaching for her coat. "Yes, I do." The corporate boardroom stretched between them like a battlefield, polished mahogany reflecting their fractured history. While 40 floors below, Chicago traffic hummed with the rhythm of lives that moved forward, unlike theirs. Evan sat across from her, nervous energy radiating off him in waves. Behind him, his lawyer shuffled papers importantly. Beside her, Malik radiated controlled fury that made her skin tingle with awareness. "You look good," Evan said, eyes dropping to her rounded belly. 6 months now, impossible to hide. "I am good. I made a mistake, Tiana. I was scared. I was young. You were 23, not 13. Her voice carried a strength that surprised them both. "And you weren't scared. You were embarrassed." His face flushed. "That's not true, isn't it?" Malik spoke for the first time, voice deadly quiet. "Because I remember you joking about ghetto girls who think they can trap rich boys. I remember you laughing about how she'd served her purpose." The lawyer cleared his throat uncomfortably. Evan's face went pale. "I never said that." "We both know you did." Malik leaned forward slightly, and Evan actually flinched. "Question is, what do you want now?" "Because she's moved on. I want to do right by my child." "Your child?" The words came out harder than Tiana intended. "Your child? You mean the complication you couldn't handle? The problem that wasn't yours?" Evan's hands shook as he reached across the table toward her. "I was different then. My family, the pressure." "Don't." She pulled back from his touch. "Don't you dare blame your family for your cowardice. Have you ever watched someone stand up for you in a way no one ever had? Have you ever felt the rush of seeing your worth defended by someone who truly values you? Because there's something electric about watching real love in action." Malik's protective instincts during the confrontation sent heat pooling low in her belly, even in the sterile boardroom. This was what security felt like. This was what being claimed looked like. Evan's parting words echoed in the empty boardroom. "She was mine first, Malik. Don't forget that." But what he didn't know was that Tiana had heard everything from the hallway, including Malik's response. "She was never yours to lose." That night, she would show him exactly who she belonged to now. That night, she didn't come to his bed as a refugee seeking shelter. She came as a woman choosing her future. Tiana stood in Malik's bedroom doorway at 11:47 p.m., still wearing the black dress from dinner, but everything about her posture had changed. The girl who used to apologize for taking up space was gone. In her place stood someone who knew exactly what she wanted. "I heard what you said to Evan today," she whispered, stepping into the moonlit room. "You called me yours." Malik sat on the edge of his king-size bed, still in his white button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up from a long day of protecting her from his former best friend's chaos. His dark eyes tracked her movement across the hardwood floor. "I meant every word," he said quietly, "but I won't pressure you into anything, Tiana. You've been through enough." She pressed her finger to his lips, silencing him. "I'm not broken anymore, Malik. I'm choosing you. Not because I need saving, but because I want you." Her hands found his shirt buttons, working them open with steady fingers while her eyes never left his face. This wasn't the desperate fumbling of her past with Evan. This was deliberate. Certain, when she pushed the fabric from his shoulders, revealing the muscled chest that had been her pillow for countless worried nights, she felt her breath catch. Not from nerves this time, but from desire that belonged entirely to her. "Are you sure?" he asked, even as his hands settled on her waist, thumbs brushing the silk of her dress. Instead of answering with words, she reached behind her back and slowly pulled down the zipper. The dress pooled at her feet like a black puddle, leaving her standing before him in nothing but the confidence he'd helped her build. His sharp intake of breath was worth every moment of doubt she'd carried. "Tiana," he breathed, her name sounding like a prayer on his lips. She straddled his lap, feeling powerful when his hands immediately spanned her back, holding her like she was precious but not fragile. Her growing belly, just starting to show at 4 months, pressed between them, a reminder of everything she'd survived to get here. "I love you," she whispered against his ear, the words falling easier than she'd expected. "Not because you saved me, because you saw me." His response was a kiss that stole her breath and gave her life at the same time. Deep, hungry, full of months of restrained, wanting finally set free. When he lifted her and laid her back against his Egyptian cotton sheets, she felt like a queen claiming her throne. Every touch was worship, every kiss a promise, every whispered endearment a vow. This wasn't charity sex or grateful sex. This was chosen sex. Wanted sex. Powerful sex between two people who had found each other in the wreckage of other people's failures. Hours later, as dawn painted the Chicago skyline in shades of gold and pink, Tiana traced lazy patterns on Malik's chest while he played with her hair. "I used to think love was supposed to hurt," she murmured. "That if it didn't break you a little, it wasn't real." "What do you think now?" he asked, voice rough with satisfaction and sleep. She lifted her head to meet his eyes. "Now I think love is supposed to build you. Make you more yourself, not less." Have you ever felt the difference between being wanted and being chosen? Between someone taking you and someone claiming you? Share in the comments what real love feels like to you. But their peaceful morning was interrupted by Malik's phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. Text after text after text, until he finally reached for it with a frown. His expression darkened as he read, jaw tightening with each message. "What is it?" Tiana asked, suddenly afraid their happiness was too good to last. "Evan," Malik said grimly, showing her the screen full of notifications. "He's not done fighting for what he threw away, and apparently, he's bringing reinforcements." Going public with their relationship wasn't planned. It was forced when Evan showed up at her baby shower with photographers in tow. The afternoon had been perfect. Malik's mother's backyard in Lincoln Park bloomed with pink and gold decorations, filled with women who had become Tiana's chosen family. His aunts, cousins, and business associates had welcomed her with a warmth she'd never experienced from Evan's cold Connecticut circles. She was laughing at one of his cousin's jokes, one hand resting on her 6-month belly when the gate crashed open. Evan Carter stormed across the manicured lawn like he owned it, designer suit wrinkled and expression wild. Behind him, 3 photographers with massive cameras captured every step, every shocked face, every moment of violated privacy. "That's my baby she's carrying," he shouted, voice carrying over the sudden silence. "My child." The party froze. Pastel balloons swayed in the breeze above tables loaded with gifts, while cell phones appeared in every woman's hand, ready to record whatever came next. Tiana felt Malik's solid presence behind her before she saw him, his hand settling protectively on her shoulder. "You need to leave," Malik said, voice deadly calm despite the chaos erupting around them. "Now, don't tell me what to do with my own family," Evan snarled, gesturing wildly at Tiana's belly. "She was mine first. That baby is mine, and I'm not letting you steal them." The cameras clicked and flashed, capturing every word for tomorrow's headlines. Tiana felt something shift inside her chest. Not fear this time, but fury. Pure, clean anger at this man who had the nerve to claim ownership of people who had moved on without him. "Your family?" she repeated, standing slowly from her chair. "Where was your family when I was broke and scared and calling you for help?" Where was your family when I couldn't afford prenatal vitamins? Her voice grew stronger with each word, carrying across the lawn like a battle cry. You don't get to abandon someone and then come back demanding rights when it's convenient for you. The photographers swung their lenses toward her, but she didn't flinch. Let them capture this. Let the world see what standing up for yourself looked like. Malik stepped beside her, no longer behind her, but with her, presenting a united front. DNA doesn't make a father, he said, voice carrying the authority of a man who had built an empire from nothing. Being here does. Supporting her does. Loving that child before it's even born does. His hand found hers, fingers interlocking in front of God, family, and cameras. I've been more of a father to this baby in 6 months than you'll ever be in a lifetime. When someone tries to disrupt your peace and claim ownership of your happiness, how do you respond? Have you ever had to defend your joy publicly? Share your story in the comments. The silence stretched for heartbeats, broken only by camera shutters and distant traffic. Then Evan played his final card. We'll see what the courts say about that, he sneered, and what America thinks about this whole setup when they know the real story. By sunset, their private moment had become national news, with hashtags trending and every detail of their lives under scrutiny. Fame arrived like a hurricane. Everyone had opinions about the black billionaire, the abandoned girl carrying another man's baby, and the love story that broke all the rules. Within 12 hours of the baby shower confrontation, Tiana's face was on every major news network. Not as a victim this time, but as the center of a story that America couldn't stop talking about. Interracial drama. Tech billionaire fights for pregnant ex scrolled across CNN's bottom ticker, while pundits debated everything from paternity rights to racial dynamics in modern relationships. Tiana sat in the green room at the network's Chicago studio, adjusting her royal blue maternity dress and trying to calm her nerves. 7 months pregnant and glowing with purpose, she was about to tell her side of the story to millions of viewers. You don't have to do this, Malik said for the 10th time, squeezing her hand. We can handle this privately. No, she said firmly, watching the monitor show Evan's earlier interview where he'd painted himself as the wrong party. I'm done letting other people control my narrative. It's time America heard what abandonment actually sounds like. The studio lights blazed hot and bright as she walked onto the set, settling into the chair across from veteran journalist Patricia Williams. A black woman whose reputation for tough but fair interviews had made her a household name. Tiana, thank you for joining us, Patricia began. The whole country is talking about your story. Tell us in your own words, what happened when you told Evan Carter you were pregnant? Tiana took a breath and looked directly into the camera. I called him excited, she said simply. I thought we were building a future together. His exact words were, that's not my problem, and then he blocked my number. The interview continued for 20 minutes, Tiana's calm, clear voice describing months of ignored calls, unpaid bills, and sleeping on friends' couches while carrying a child. And when Malik offered to help, Patricia prompted. He didn't just offer money, Tiana replied. He offered dignity. He saw a woman worth investing in, not a problem to be solved or ignored. The segment went viral within hours, but it was what happened next that changed everything. That evening, as Tiana and Malik watched the interview coverage from their penthouse, her phone rang. Unknown number. Don't answer it, Malik warned, but she was already sliding to accept. What they heard made her blood freeze. It was a voicemail from months ago. Evan's voice, slurred with alcohol, talking to someone else. I can't raise a black kid, man. My family would never accept it. Better to just disappear, you know? Let her figure it out. How did you get this? She whispered into the phone. Someone who works at his lawyer's office. A woman's voice replied. Someone who got tired of watching rich white boys destroy black women's lives without consequences. If you had access to proof that someone who hurt you was actually worse than you thought, would you use it? What would justice look like to you? Share your thoughts below. The recording had already been sent to every major news outlet. By morning, Evan Carter wasn't just the ex who abandoned his pregnant girlfriend. He was the face of racist abandonment, and his words were trending nationwide. He proposed not because the world was watching, but because watching her handle the world made him realize she was exactly who he wanted to face forever with. The leaked voicemail had been playing on repeat across every news channel for 3 days. Evan's racist admission had sparked protests outside his family's Connecticut estate and cost his tech startup 2 major investors. Meanwhile, Tiana had become the face of resilience, fielding interview requests from Oprah to The View. But Malik wasn't thinking about any of that as he knelt in the private ultrasound room at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, ring box trembling in his hands. The baby's heartbeat is strong, Dr. Rodriguez had just announced, pointing to the screen showing their healthy 8-month-old daughter. Perfect positioning for delivery. You're going to meet her very soon. That's when Malik had dropped to one knee beside the examination table, pulling the Tiffany box from his jacket pocket. Tiana, he said, voice shaking with emotion, I don't want to meet our daughter as your boyfriend. I want to meet her as your husband. Tiana's eyes filled with tears as she looked down at him. This man who had changed her entire life, not by rescuing her, but by recognizing her. The world is going to have opinions about this, she whispered, gesturing toward the door where they could hear reporters calling her name from the hospital lobby. About us, about this timing. Let them talk, Malik interrupted. I'm not proposing because of the cameras or the headlines or because I want to prove something to Evan Carter. I'm proposing because 3 days ago, when that recording came out and the whole world was watching you fall apart, you didn't break. You got stronger. He opened the box, revealing a stunning emerald-cut diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the afternoon light streaming through the hospital window. You handled that interview with more grace than senators handle press conferences. You turned his weakness into your strength, his hate into your power. And I realized I don't just love you, I admire the hell out of you. Tiana laughed through her tears, one hand resting on her belly where their daughter kicked, as if she approved. Malik Hassan, are you proposing to me in a hospital room while I'm covered in ultrasound gel? I'm proposing to you exactly where we are right now, he said seriously. Messy, imperfect, real, and absolutely certain about our future. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes, of course, yes. The ring slid perfectly onto her finger as their daughter's heartbeat continued its steady rhythm on the monitor, the soundtrack to their engagement. That night, in their penthouse bedroom, they celebrated with the passion of people who had fought for their happiness and won. Tiana moved above him with the confidence of a woman who knew exactly how wanted she was, the engagement ring catching lamplight as she claimed her pleasure. Mrs. Hassan, he murmured afterward, hands spanning her belly. How does that sound? Like everything I never dared to dream, she replied. What does it mean when someone chooses you not despite your complications, but because of your strength? When they see your survival as victory rather than damage? Share your thoughts on love that celebrates your resilience. But their celebration was cut short by Malik's lawyer calling at midnight. Evan wasn't congratulating them on their engagement. He was filing a paternity lawsuit, demanding DNA tests and visitation rights. The war for their family was just beginning. The courthouse became their second home, but every legal battle only proved what love looked like when it refused to back down. Cook County Family Court buzzed with the controlled chaos of broken families seeking resolution. Tiana sat in the wooden pew behind their lawyer's table, 8.5 months pregnant and radiating the kind of calm that came from finally fighting battles worth winning. Across the aisle, Evan fidgeted in his expensive suit, flanked by 3 attorneys his family's money had bought. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by weeks of public shame and lost business deals. Your Honor, Evan's lead counsel began, my client is the biological father and has constitutional rights to his child, regardless of his past mistakes. Judge Patricia Hendricks, a no-nonsense black woman in her 50s, peered over her glasses with the expression of someone who had heard every sob story twice. Mr. Carter, she said directly to Evan, you abandoned a mess. Davis, during her pregnancy, you provided no financial support. You made no contact for over 6 months. And according to this recorded evidence, she held up the voicemail transcript, you expressed explicit prejudice against raising a child of mixed race. Evan's face flushed red. That was taken out of context. The context, Judge Hendricks interrupted, appears to be you explaining to someone why you chose to abandon a pregnant woman based on the race of the child you helped create. Malik reached over and squeezed Tiana's hand as their lawyer, Maria Santos, stood to present their case. Your Honor, Mr. Hassan has been the primary support system throughout this pregnancy. He's attended every medical appointment, paid all expenses, and has already begun legal proceedings to adopt this child with Ms. Davis's full consent. The hearing continued for 2 hours, with testimony about financial support, emotional presence, and the best interests of the child. Through it all, Tiana felt strangely peaceful. This wasn't about Evan anymore. This was about protecting the family they'd built. During a recess, Evan cornered them in the hallway. Tiana, please, he said desperately. I made mistakes, but that's still my blood. Doesn't that mean something? She looked at him, really looked, and felt nothing but pity for the man who had once held her heart. Blood doesn't make you a parent, she said quietly. Love does. Presence does. Choosing to stay when things get hard does. She placed her hand on her belly, where their daughter kicked strong and steady. She'll know her medical history. She'll know where she came from. But she'll never doubt who her real father is. The final ruling came down 2 weeks later. Evan was granted biological acknowledgement and rights to medical updates, but Malik would be listed as the legal father on the birth certificate. No visitation would be granted until the child was old enough to express her own preferences. What makes someone a real parent, biology or presence? Who deserved the title of father in this situation? Share your thoughts on what family really means. As they left the courthouse that day, Evan made one last desperate threat. This isn't over. I'll prove she only wanted your money. But Tiana was already walking away, Malik's arm around her shoulders. Focused on the future they were building rather than the past they'd escaped. 3 days later, her water broke during a business dinner. Their daughter was ready to meet the parents who had fought for the right to love her. Planning their dream wedding became a battlefield when every vendor, every venue, every detail attracted opinions from strangers who thought they knew their story. The bridal boutique in downtown Chicago buzzed with excitement as Tiana stood before the three-way mirror, pregnancy curves filling the ivory silk like destiny, while Malik's mother and sister dabbed tears and whispered prayers of gratitude. But even this sacred moment couldn't escape the chaos. Mrs. Johnson, there's a problem with your caterer, the wedding planner whispered urgently into her phone. Someone called claiming to be from the health department. They're threatening to shut down the kitchen on your wedding day. Malik's jaw tightened as he listened from the corner. They both knew who was behind this latest attack. Evan had spent weeks sabotaging their vendors, calling florists with fake bomb threats, sending fake reviews to their photographer, even convincing their original venue that they were a security risk due to media attention. He's not going to stop, is he? Tiana asked, watching her reflection shimmer in the designer gown. Let him try, Malik replied, his voice steady but his eyes burning. We've got backup plans for our backup plans. And they did. When Evan managed to get their cake decorator to cancel, Malik's business partner stepped in with a team from the city's most exclusive bakery. When their string quartet mysteriously became unavailable, 3 of Chicago's top musicians volunteered their services for free, claiming they wanted to be part of the love story that made bigots cry. The night of Tiana's bachelorette party, her friends from Detroit mixed with Malik's sister's wealthy Chicago crew in a private room at the city's hottest rooftop bar. The conversation flowed as freely as the champagne. Well, sparkling cider for the pregnant bride. Girl, you know he's going to try something at the wedding, warned Keisha, Tiana's oldest friend from home. Let him. Tiana laughed, one hand resting on her growing belly. I'm not the same scared girl he left crying in that apartment. I'm Mrs. Malik Johnson now, almost. Meanwhile, across town at Malik's bachelor party, the mood was equally confident but more protective. His college friends, business partners, and even some competitors had gathered at an exclusive private club, but the conversation kept returning to security. You sure you don't want actual bodyguards? Asked Marcus, his business partner. The security team is already hired, Malik smiled, adjusting his cufflinks. But honestly, the best protection we have is the truth. And the truth is, we're not hiding anymore. Back at the bridal suite that night, Tiana stood before the full-length mirror in her silk robe, practicing her vows one more time. Malik knocked softly before entering, breaking tradition because they'd already broken so many rules. "You're not supposed to see me before tomorrow," she teased. "I'm not looking at the dress," he murmured, pulling her close. "I'm looking at my wife." Their kiss was hungry, desperate, the kind that happens when you're about to claim everything you fought for in front of the world. His hands traced the silk of her robe, feeling her body respond even through the thin fabric. But their phone buzzed with breaking news alerts. Evan had just held a press conference, announcing his engagement to blonde socialite Madison Whitmore and claiming he'd moved on from his mistake. Perfect timing, Tiana whispered against Malik's lips. "Tomorrow, everyone gets to see which love story is real." Have you ever planned something important while someone tried to destroy it from the shadows? Share in the comments how you protected your joy from people who wanted to steal it. Their wedding wasn't just a ceremony. It was a statement that love doesn't ask permission and doesn't apologize for choosing happiness over hate. The Chicago Botanic Garden bloomed around them like nature's cathedral, 500 guests witnessing not just a wedding, but a revolution. The moment a discarded woman became a celebrated wife. News helicopters circled overhead like mechanical angels, broadcasting their joy to millions of viewers who had followed their story from abandonment to altar. Tiana walked down the petal-strewn path in a custom gown that hugged her 6-month pregnancy like sculpture, her father's arms steady beside her. But her eyes never left Malik, standing at the altar in his tailored tux, tears already streaming down his face. "You look like everything I prayed for," he whispered as her father placed her hand in his. The officiant, a family friend who had watched their love story develop, addressed the crowd with unusual directness. "We gather today not just to celebrate Tiana and Malik, but to witness what happens when two people choose love over fear, commitment over convenience, and forever over the opinions of those who don't matter." When it came time for vows, Tiana's voice carried across the garden with crystal clarity. "Malik, 18 months ago, I was ready to give up everything, my body, my dignity, my dreams, just to survive. You didn't save me from that choice. You showed me I was worth choosing differently." Her hand rested on her growing belly. "You loved me when I couldn't love myself. You claimed me when the world said I was disposable. You made me a mother, a partner, and today a wife. I promise to love you not just for who you are, but for who you helped me become." Malik's response had guests openly sobbing. "Tiana, the first time I saw you with Evan, I knew he didn't deserve you, but I never imagined I might. You've taught me that love isn't about rescue, it's about recognition. I recognized your strength before you did. I recognized your worth when you couldn't see it. And I recognized my future the moment you trusted me with your heart." His voice broke slightly. "I promise to protect not just you and our children, but the woman you've become despite everything that tried to break you." As they exchanged rings, social media exploded with reactions. Hashtag Tiana and Malik trended worldwide, with millions sharing their own stories of abandonment, redemption, and love that refused to be shamed. The reception at the Four Seasons was a masterpiece of celebration. Celebrity friends, business moguls, and community leaders from Detroit mingled under crystal chandeliers, while Tiana and Malik moved through the crowd like royalty, which in many ways they had become. But the real magic happened during their first dance. As Alicia Keys performed their song live, Tiana whispered something in Malik's ear that made him stop moving. "Are you sure?" he asked, eyes wide. She nodded, one hand pressed her side. "I think our daughter doesn't want to wait for the honeymoon." The contractions had started during the ceremony, but Tiana was determined to finish their perfect day. Now, as they swayed to the music with their closest friends and family watching, she felt another wave of pressure. "Ladies and gentlemen," Malik announced, his voice carrying across the ballroom as the music faded. "It appears our daughter has chosen today to make her entrance. We're heading to the hospital, but please keep celebrating. This is the happiest day of our lives, and it's about to get even better. The crowd erupted in cheers as Tiana, still in her wedding gown, was helped into the waiting car. Photographers captured every moment. The billionaire groom still in his tux, holding his bride's hand as labor pains mixed with wedding joy. What would you do if your perfect day became even more perfect in the most unexpected way? Tell me in the comments about the most beautiful surprises in your life. She gave birth not just to their daughter, but to the final piece of herself, the woman who had traveled from abandoned to adored. The delivery room filled with golden morning light as their daughter made her entrance. Tiny fists raised like victory flags while her parents wept with joy and exhaustion, knowing they'd created perfection from pain. The wedding dress had been replaced with a hospital gown, but Tiana had never felt more beautiful. "She's perfect," Malik whispered, his voice thick with emotion as he held their daughter for the first time. "Look at her, baby. She's absolutely perfect. 7 pounds, 2 ounces of pure love, with her mother's determined chin and her father's gentle eyes." The nurses bustled around them, but the world had narrowed to just the 3 of them, a family forged from the ashes of betrayal. "What should we call her?" Tiana asked, exhausted but glowing. "Hope," Malik said without hesitation. "Hope Johnson, because that's what she represents." The media went crazy. "Wedding day, baby," screamed the headlines. From altar to delivery room, photos of Malik still in his tuxedo, cradling his newborn daughter, broke the internet. Their story had captured hearts worldwide. But this moment, new parents overwhelmed with love, touched something universal. 3 days later, they brought Hope home to the penthouse that had become Tiana's sanctuary 2 years earlier. The nursery, painted in soft yellows and decorated with books instead of typical baby themes, overlooked the same Chicago skyline where their love story had developed. "Remember when you wouldn't even let me buy you groceries?" Malik teased as he watched Tiana breastfeed their daughter with natural grace. "I was so scared of owing anyone anything," she laughed softly. "Now look at us." Their home became a revolving door of visitors. Malik's parents, flying in from Atlanta. Tiana's mother, now healthy and strong thanks to the medical care Malik had quietly provided. Friend from both their worlds mixing and celebrating the miracle of Hope's arrival. But the real transformation was in Tiana herself. Motherhood had awakened something fierce and protective. She was no longer the girl who accepted scraps of love or questioned her worth. She was a woman who had created life with a man who cherished her completely. 6 weeks later, as they made love for the first time since Hope's birth, the passion was different, deeper, more connected. She moved above him in the moonlight, streaming through their bedroom windows, confident in her postpartum body because his worship of it had never wavered. "I love who we've become," she whispered against his neck. "We're just getting started," he replied, his hands steady on her hips as she claimed her pleasure without hesitation or shame. Their happiness was complete, their family perfect, their future unlimited. But the past wasn't quite finished with them yet. 3 months after Hope's birth, legal documents arrived with Evan's name on them. He was suing for grandparents' rights, claiming his parents deserved access to their biological grandchild. The signature on the papers was shaky, desperate, a last attempt to force his way back into their lives. Tiana read the lawsuit while nursing Hope, and instead of fear, she felt something unexpected, pity. He still didn't understand that biology doesn't create family, love does. Have you ever felt sorry for someone who tried to hurt you because they couldn't recognize real love when they saw it? Share your thoughts on what makes a real family. 2 years after he walked away, Evan finally got his face-to-face meeting with Tiana, but she was no longer the broken girl he'd abandoned. The mediation room felt too small to contain the weight of their history. Him disheveled and desperate across the polished table, her glowing with the confidence of a woman who had found her worth. Malik sat beside her, one protective hand resting on her back, while lawyers shuffled papers and tried to reduce their complex story to legal terms. Evan looked terrible. 2 years of watching Tiana's success from the sidelines had taken their toll. His engagement to Madison had lasted exactly 3 months before she left him, for a hedge fund manager with better prospects. His tech investments had failed spectacularly without Malik's backing, and his family's Connecticut money was tied up in trust funds he couldn't access. "I made a mistake," he began, his voice cracking. "I was scared, overwhelmed. I didn't know how to handle. A black baby?" Tiana interrupted, her voice steady as steel. "Let's be honest about what scared you, Evan." The leaked voicemail had destroyed him professionally. No company would hire the man caught on record saying he couldn't raise a black kid. His own law firm had quietly asked him to resign. Meanwhile, Tiana and Malik had turned their media attention into a platform, starting a foundation for abandoned mothers and building a business empire together. "I want to know my daughter," he continued, ignoring her directness. "I have rights. You have biology." Malik spoke for the first time, his voice deadly calm. "Rights are earned by showing up. Where were you when she had morning sickness? When we did midnight feedings? When she took her first steps?" Evan's lawyer cleared his throat. "My client is prepared to offer significant financial support." "We don't need your money," Tiana laughed, but there was no humor in it. "We never did. What I needed was a partner who wouldn't run when things got complicated. What I needed was a man who saw a black child as a blessing, not a burden." "I've changed," Evan pleaded, leaning forward desperately. "I've been in therapy. I understand now." "You understand now?" Tiana's voice rose slightly. "You understand that abandoning a pregnant woman was wrong? You understand that racism is bad? Congratulations, Evan. You've achieved the moral development of a 12-year-old. Malik's hand found hers under the table, steadying her, but she didn't need steadying anymore. She was rock solid in her convictions. "I loved you," Evan whispered, his final card played. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. When Tiana finally spoke, her words ended everything. "You loved the idea of me, the convenient, quiet girl who made you feel important but never challenged your comfort. He loves who I actually am, the mouthy, complicated, strong woman who builds foundations and raises children and doesn't accept less than she deserves." She stood, Malik rising beside her like a match set. "Hope has a father. She has grandparents who flew across the country to be at her birth. She has a family that chose to love her before she was even born. Biology doesn't make you family, presence does." As they walked out of the mediation room, Evan's voice followed them one last time. "I could have loved her too." Tiana paused at the door, looking back at the man who had once held her entire future in his hands. "But you didn't choose to. And that's the difference between a sperm donor and a dad. If someone who hurt you deeply tried to come back after you'd healed, what would you say to them? How do you handle closure with people who abandoned you?" 5 years later, she stood on the same red carpet where this story began. But this time, she wasn't the abandoned ex watching from the sidelines. She was the main event. The same Chicago ballroom that once witnessed her heartbreak now celebrated her triumph. Crystal chandeliers reflecting off her custom gown, while photographers captured the woman who had turned abandonment into achievement. Tonight's gala honored entrepreneurs who had overcome adversity to build empires, and Tiana Johnson was the keynote speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder and CEO of Hope Rising Foundation and Second Chance Enterprises, Tiana Johnson. The applause was thunderous as she took the stage, 5 months pregnant with her second child and absolutely radiant. In the audience, Malik beamed with pride, while 4-year-old Hope played quietly with her coloring book, already used to her mother's spotlight. 5 years ago, I stood in a clinic ready to sell my body to save my mother's life, Tiana began, her voice carrying across the hushed ballroom. I thought that was my only option because I've been taught that women like me, young, black, broke, didn't have choices. We had survival. In the back of the room, unnoticed by security, Evan Carter watched from the shadows. He looked older, smaller somehow, as if success had fled from him the moment he'd walked away from her. But I learned something powerful, Tiana continued. We all have more value than our worst moments. We all deserve love that sees our strength, not just our struggles. And sometimes, the person who walks away from you does you the biggest favor of your life. They make room for someone who knows your worth. Her eyes found Malik in the crowd, and even after 5 years of marriage, The connection between them was electric. Today, Hope Rising Foundation has helped over 10,000 women escape cycles of desperation. Second Chance Enterprises has created jobs in communities that banks call unbankable. And my husband and I prove every day that love doesn't ask for your resume. It asks for your heart. The standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. As Tiana left the stage, several women approached her with tears in their eyes, sharing their own stories of abandonment turned to triumph. Later that night, back in their penthouse that now felt like a palace earned rather than given, Tiana stood before the same windows where she'd first felt safe. But everything had changed. The scared girl seeking shelter had become the woman providing it for others. Malik joined her at the window, wrapping his arms around her from behind, hands resting on her growing belly. "Remember when you were afraid I was too good to be true?" he murmured against her neck. "Remember when you were afraid I'd run again?" she countered. They made love that night with the passion of people who had fought for their happiness and won. She was confident in her pregnant body, powerful in her success, secure in love that had been tested by public scrutiny and emerged stronger. As she moved above him in the moonlight, every touch was a celebration of how far they'd traveled together. "What are we naming this one?" she whispered afterward, tracing patterns on his chest. "Victory," he said without hesitation, "because that's what this is." The next morning brought news that would close their story's final chapter. Evan Carter had been arrested for fraud, his desperate attempts to regain wealth and status finally catching up with him. But Tiana felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only gratitude for the path that had forced her to walk. Standing in their daughter's nursery, watching Hope play with blocks that spelled out brave and strong and loved, Tiana understood something profound. The person who abandoned her hadn't stolen her future, he'd revealed it. So what would you do if someone discarded you like trash, only to watch you become treasure? Would you gloat or would you grace? Tell me in the comments what real victory looks like to you. If this story of turning abandonment into triumph touched your heart, smash that like button. Subscribe for more stories about women who refuse to stay broken. Tell me in the comments, Team Malik or Team Evan. And remember, sometimes the person who walks away does you the biggest favor of your life. They make room for someone who knows your worth.